Hey, welcome to the Inner Fire Climbing Podcast. I am Jesse Firestone. Today's guest is Andy McVittie. Andy is a physiotherapist in the UK, not in London, but in the UK. He's also a coach, and he's been climbing for over 30 years. So it's no surprise that the through line of this conversation was longevity. We talked about Andy's journey through coaching, school, physio, early fatherhood, and climbing during all of that. And then we get into his current project, which is to bring a little more scientific basis to some guidelines for youth athletic development, something that other sports maybe have a leg up on compared to climbing. And we talked about the so-called meat grinder with youth teams, whether those are helpful or healthy, both for performance and for the kids themselves. And I did my best to play devil's advocate a few times. Not sure I nailed it. You tell me. The back half of the conversation, we got more into what it's like to keep pursuing climbing as we age, both from a physical and psychological side, and then also a philosophical side as well. And I have to say, I find myself feeling pretty fired up. The idea of doing 9 weeks of sunny limestone climbing every winter by the time I'm in my early 50s is very appealing. Andy's just full of wisdom, easy to talk to. I think at some point I made a hard left turn into a Lord of the Rings reference, and he didn't even blink at it, which I appreciate. He doesn't shy away from looking at things from a big picture perspective, and that made him a great guest. So thank you, Andy. And without further ado, Andy McVittie. Andy McVittie, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Really nice to be here.
Good to have you here. You and I have just chatted a bunch online about various things, and I think what actually made me want to have you on the show was a conversation that we had about like the safety features in the world, safety issues in the World Series now, not really the World Cup anymore. I guess they changed the name of it. And just conversations we had about like youth climbing and burnout and stuff. And I was like, okay, well, there's a bunch of stuff here, so probably ought to get you on the show, talk about some of the stuff. So why don't we start with just an introduction of who you are and what you do and how you got here.
Yeah. Andy McVittie. I'm a physiotherapist, as they're known in the UK. So a physical therapist, as they're known in America. I've been climbing, I think, 32 years now. For the first half of my climbing career, I didn't even particularly know too much about training. There weren't any indoor gyms where I was, that kind of thing. So it was traditional climbing, a lot of multi-pitch mountain routes, that kind of thing, and then discovered sport climbing and bouldering and training. I've actually been coaching for, I think, 16 years now. I did one of the original Neil Gresham coaching awards that I went down to London for, and I've done further coaching stuff since then. And yeah, also a physiotherapist, obviously. That changed from being person at the crag that people would come up to and say, "Hi Andy, I know you're a physio, I've got this sore finger." And that became a bit formalized. I started doing one evening a week at a climbing gym, providing the service, and it just grew, and now it's my full-time job and has been for a number of years. So it's
gotcha.
Cool. Yeah.
What came first, your physio studying or climbing, or were they kind of concurrent?
Oh, no, climbing. I started climbing properly. I'd done some climbing at school when I was sort of like 14, 15, and thought it was absolutely amazing and really, really wanted to do it, but never found the opportunity to take part in it, really. And then when I got to university, joined the mountaineering or the climbing society, and started climbing there. That first degree was a sports science and coaching degree. At that point, I wasn't physio. I ended up actually, at that point, I was looking like I was going to join the RAF and be a pilot. I actually changed my mind about that. I ended up in the police. I did that for a good few years. Then I became a outdoor instructor, got all my qualifications and such like there. And then I became a physio. It's kind of in my 20s, 30s, 40s, and I'm in my 50s now. And physio has stuck. It's the one that's stuck for the longest. It's kept me interested.
Being a cop wasn't for you, huh?
I did actually really enjoy it, and the job I was in was fantastic, and the role I was doing at the time was really, really rewarding. situation, essentially. We touched on it slightly before, but myself and my wife, then we fostered, and we ended up adopting two. That was never the plan.
Okay.
So these two came to stay and never went home. And yeah, one of us basically had to stop work. And
Okay.
yeah, and at that point I had my qualifications for outdoor instructing, which is quite freelance, taking people out climbing, canoeing, gill scrambling, all that kind of thing. So that was flexible work that fitted around, and so yeah, that's why I left the police.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
So you basically you studied all this stuff, and then you were like, oh, we adopted these kids now. I'm going to be a stay-at-home dad.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's kind of a crazy pivot. I mean, what did your climbing feel like suddenly becoming a stay-at-home dad?
Well, interestingly, I do look back on it now with some regret, but purely from the point of view of my climbing, not from it was a wonderful thing to do. That sounded bad, didn't it?
I know. I 100% get it because I have the baby right now, so I'm just like,
right.
It's so hard to talk about missing things in your climbing without sounding like you're bitter about the baby. So I totally get it.
We're going to school. We were at that point actually living in the national park in a really small little town where there was the school had 2 classes for the ages of like from 4 up to 11. It was that small. A wonderful place for them to be, a wonderful environment with the additional needs that they had. Then once they were in school and settled, I actually found myself with quite a lot of time. I would be free between maybe 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock. Not always, obviously. And it was almost too much time. I look back now and I really didn't take advantage of that. I would look out the window and think, there's one cloud in the sky, that's a chance of rain. I'm not going to go out today because I can go tomorrow. And that, it was odd. You do think I'd have just been like, every day or whenever I could, but it actually took a bit of a backseat. I think also as well with the children, and again, not beating around the bush about being a parent and that kind of thing, they were incredibly hard work. There was an awful lot going on with them, an awful lot of behaviours to deal with at home, lots of liaison with social services and this kind of thing happening all the time. And maybe I look back on that now and think about allostatic load. And yeah, I did have a day free, but actually that free day, I just needed to do not very much.
Chill out. I was going to say, maybe it's a good thing with all that free time that you didn't have access to like a moon board back then.
That would have been bad. Have been bad. But that was the period when I bouldered my hardest. But that's because, again, as a parent, I see it often with my friends you become a boulderer for a while, don't you? Just because of
it's so convenient.
Ease. Yeah. So
you can have like a good session.
Yeah. And you don't need to rely on anybody else, have partners match up, this, that, and the other. You can just go. It's the equivalent of just grabbing your trainers and running out the door, isn't it, and going for a run. Yeah.
So the kids kind of got older, and you were like, I'm going to go back to doing some kind of, more formal seeming work, and switched into doing more of the physio stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that golden period of me having all the time in the world that I didn't take advantage of didn't last all that long, because once they transferred to high school, it was an environment that neither of them were able to cope with. So we ended up homeschooling, and we actually then went to live in Spain for a couple of years, which was great. I was working there as a coach and an instructor. Yeah, that was cool. And that funnily enough, was the time when my route climbing became its best.
As it would in Spain. Yeah,
I was getting out twice a week on really, really high quality crags. No real training, that kind of thing. Just getting out on rock a lot and building up some natural endurance. I was with a Spanish crowd who didn't really like projecting things. We would just go to a different crag every week, or every time. And I was just on-siting all the time and just fighting. I was trying to on-site their warm-ups. It was
That's so cool, though.
Right. Yeah, it was a pretty good environment to be in. I learned a lot.
Like you say you weren't doing any training, but I think that's actually probably like some of the best training that you can do for sport climbing is just wall-to-wall on-siting. That's literally like in that Adam Ondra documentary from probably 10 years ago now. That's what they said. It's all he did for the first like 10 years of his climbing was just try to on-site everything and like never go back to a route. And man, if you have the mindset for that, it seems like it would be pretty incredible. But we like projecting.
Yeah, but I was kind of that was what it was. This was the crew I'd it's difficult in a foreign country. They were the people I had to climb with, so I went where they went, and I climbed what was getting climbed. Yeah. But it did me good. I think it did me good.
Yeah. You said you were coaching during that time. What were you doing? Like, what was the coaching?
Yeah, so on performance holidays, so people would come over for a week, not by myself. I was working for a company, and coaching, basically using my coaching experience at that point. And it could actually be, sometimes people were complete beginners, or it was indoor to outdoor, learning to climb on rock, but then how to clean a route and keep yourself safe and that type of thing. But yeah, most of it was actually focused around that people wanting to achieve a certain thing. It was cool. You'd get 3 or 4 people maybe for a week, and just really able to deep dive and eat with them, and in the evening, and really get to know them, and really help people on. It was nice. It was good. Yeah,
that's cool. I love working with people in person. It's always like a little harder to make the sale, kind of. That's a very businessy way to put it, but it is harder to do that, just because people are basically paying for 4 or 6 hours of my time, whether they pay for the in-person or they pay for a training plan. It's actually not that different, depending on the length of the plan and everything. It's the same amount of time for me, but people perceive it as being a very different amount of value. But when you get to work with somebody in person and see them climb and point things out and bounce off of them and learn their communication style and everything, it's such a different. It is quote real coaching in a way that remote coaching is not. And
I think as well, though,
on my own profession,
you get the real-time reward, don't you? That you hopefully see your actions have, or your prompts or whatever it may be, have an actual impact in real time, and that person goes, "Oh, I get that now," and that's cool as well, isn't it? That's really nice.
Yeah, the feedback loop is way tighter.
Yeah. We have a terrible feedback loop in physio. It's bad. You work with someone and then you might not see them again for 4 to 6 weeks. Or sometimes they just needed that one appointment and they, and off they go. And then you never, how did that end? Did they, were they pleased? Did they like it?
You might not find out. You see them in 2 years and their shoulder still hurts.
Yeah. Well, it's quite a close-knit community as far as climbing goes up in the north of England. And so, you will bump into them at some point. And thankfully, so far, everybody's basically said, "Oh yeah, I never got back in touch because it all went well." But it leaves you hanging a bit, gives you low-level anxiety.
Yeah, I mean it's weird for me as a coach because, as you know, as a physio and as a climber, most climbers are injured most of the time. It's maybe it's not debilitating, and they can keep climbing at a pretty high level, but pretty much everybody is carrying some kind of tweak.
Something.
It's just the nature of the deal, and the number of times that really weekly I have a consult with somebody where it's we have to go through what their issue is and what their PT is that they're doing so that I can try not to get in the PT's way. But then it's are they even going back to the PT? I actually don't know,
Yeah.
And I just try to stay in my lane as much as I can.
Yeah, I mean, no, I think that those lines or lanes are blurring now and should be. I'm all for everybody getting involved and bringing what they have to the table and not being obviously certain aspects, for sure. But I think they're obvious, and when people start getting worried about physical trainers, as in people who work in the gym and such, have such a wealth of knowledge around exercise prescription and adaptations. If somebody's injured, there's nothing wrong with them suggesting something that means somebody can do an exercise if they've got a sore shoulder, but they can still do it now because they've turned or changed something. That's not, don't need to be shy about that kind of thing. I think it's just I will say I when I say stay in my lane, I think I mean more in my experience, every once in a while I get an injury where there is a loading that I need to figure out. I've had issues with my my intrinsics in my hands, for instance, where if I did some long isometrics on a pinch ball, I had pain for months and months, and I did those long isometrics and it was gone within a couple weeks or something. I do believe every once in a while that there's a quote magic exercise. Tyler Nelson would probably punch me if he heard me say that. But I think sometimes that's the case. But the vast majority dosage that is working at a physiological level to change and adapt that tissue.
Or
I'm
like
sure Tyler would
or
agree
it's
with that.
sensitive and you have to load it in a certain way
Yeah,
to like help desensitize it. That's a way I think about it. But
yeah,
like the
yeah,
vast majority of the time, it's just I'm just climbing too much, or I'm climbing in a certain way too much, or I'm grabbing certain grips too much. And if I just manage that and adjust it slightly, or if I get my recovery under control, going back to the allostatic
yeah,
load thing you were talking about,
yeah,
that feels very, very like noticeable right now
yeah,
for me. Those things tend to have an outsized impact on
yeah.
my recovery. And
Hmm.
so like that is what I see as my lane. It's like, okay, not going to interfere with the PT exercises you do or whatever, but I
Yeah,
am going to pay really close attention to your volume and the noises you make
all the
about your
variables.
injuries.
Yeah,
Because I
yeah,
do feel like that is a job I can play as a coach for sure. Is the
totally,
volume management
totally.
piece.
And I'm surprised, the amount of times I reach out to somebody's coach, somebody will come and say, and they might even say, which is very nice. My coach has recommended I come and see you, and then I get in touch with the coach, and there's nothing comes back, and like you were saying, are they continuing with the PT? And I'm like, are they continuing with the coach? There just seems to be this slight breakdown, and yeah, we all need to be together. Collaboration in that way is so much more powerful, isn't it? But yeah, it's strange. I don't think we've broken those barriers down properly yet.
Yeah, I guess in a perfect world, you have a coach who's a physio or a physio who's a coach, or you have an athlete who has a really high degree of knowledge about those things and they can kind of self-serve those functions.
Yeah.
But the higher level you get and the more specialized the person is, you kind of need more interdisciplinary communication, I guess, about what's going on.
And I would suggest actually as well, that certainly I'm going to stick this out and say within that elite sport, organized sports, and maybe not somebody who is operating at a very high level, but they don't compete, they're not internationals or whatever, that kind of thing. I find them to be very unaware of themselves, very unsure, because I think they've just always had a team around them informing them of what they should do. And yeah, I find them less sort of literate about themselves than I had a patient this morning. I did a quick remote this morning. It was supposed to be a day off really, but yeah, I'm talking to this and he was asking me certain things, and I kept firing back to him and saying everything in this conversation that we've had tells me that you really know yourself. You are, you're making great judgments, great adaptations, this, that, and the other. Trust yourself. You are the expert in you. I know the principles and the basics and the biology and this kind of thing, but that contextual aspect to it is you. And yeah, a lot of athletes, by which I mean, what we might think of as on the competition circuit and that kind of thing, yeah, often don't have that. I say often. I've noticed some seem lacking in it. I wouldn't. Yeah, which is interesting to me.
I mean, climbing so strongly brings out not like a total throw caution to the wind, but I do think a little bit like high level competition climbing, being able to just ignore all those signals your body is sending you and just give it 100% effort is definitely valuable. I think those guys have to be able to listen to themselves too.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you could make something that's really bad into something that's catastrophic. So I think there are probably times, but
yeah. But I feel that they've never gone through the processes of like, oh, my finger hurts. What does that mean? I'm going to have to figure this out. I maybe have to do some Googling. I'm going to have to ask my friends. I'm going to seek some professional advice. They just go, coach, what does this mean? Yeah. And then somebody else sort of takes over and deals with it for them. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, it makes me think. I think I briefly told you this in our pre-interview, but like it makes me think of this person I know who's a super high level, both indoor and outdoor climber. And I think he's like 17 or something, and he's climbing harder than I can climb, like 6 days a week or something already.
Yeah.
Like his level's so high.
Yeah.
And he just got his first injury last year, and he was like sending me all these messages, like looking for advice, and I was just thinking like it's crazy to be at the level that he's at. He's getting into single digit placements at youth nationals, and he's climbing like V14 first ascents, and he's never had an injury before. And it's crazy to me to, I had my first injuries before I climbed like V3.
No, totally. So,
Maybe that backs up your point a little bit. It's like some people can just make it quite far without ever having to deal with that stuff.
Yeah, potentially.
So like, What is your day to day now? How you said you had a remote this morning? Are you primarily a physio? Do you still do coaching in walls or like?
Yeah. I am. I would say I am a physio who is able to give hopefully helpful, specific advice to be able to look at somebody's habits, training, understand all of that, put that into the context of the person, spend some time watching them move on the wall, that kind of thing, and talk about adaptation and what we need to do. Yeah, so I think I'm a physio who with a coaching background, I would say, rather than a coach who physios. And I do still coach. There's 2 or 3 people, I'm coaching, but that's not. It's almost for fun, if that makes sense. We have a good working relationship. I've known them all for quite a long time as a coach, and I really enjoy it. So yeah,
cool. How much do you work with people who are like primarily focused on outdoor performance versus people who are maybe like competitive or like more indoor focused climbers? Do you work with a lot of kids?
Yeah, it's changing. It used to be I would work with predominantly outdoor climbers, but now as the indoor scene has grown so much, I won't say many, but yeah, a lot of the people I work with don't ever climb outside. And will often reasonably happily say, yeah, and I probably never will. And yeah, kids, yeah, definitely, because again, that's growing, and as these things grow, it's just numbers, isn't it? More and more people. There's more and more children in structured, training, really, coaching and training, aren't they? And so yes, they do get injured, same as any other sport.
Gotcha. What do you kind of see, like with your, you have a pretty long climbing background. You've been a physio for a while. You've been a coach for a while. Now you're starting to see that transition, working with more youth climbers, comp climbers. What do you think are like the primary risks or the primary like areas of concern? When you take all your experience and you look at that scene, what alarm bells are going off in your head?
It's that, and I think this is necessarily how sort of structures work. It's coming top down, if that makes sense. So funding is there for the adult team, and all the structures then were put into support and fund that. Below that, less. It's getting there, and there are now sort of levels within the UK, so that you might consider like regional. So I was at a training camp the other month where we had like the England team, the Scotland team, the Welsh team, and the Irish team were there. That's sort of like one level below. What's change or what's happening, I feel, is that we're fixated on the goal, which is to create another Toby Roberts or Erin McNeice, and we haven't actually got the same level of understanding, knowledge, just support through the youth side of things than we have at the adult side of things, both practically in real world and in research. And climbing is just changing and evolving quicker than we can sort of keep an eye on it, really. If you look at how dynamic it's become in the last few years, total changes. I feel anecdotally this is not backed up by research because it hasn't been done, I don't think. I used to see quite a lot of growth plate injuries from kids crimping too much, basically. Then it sort of died off, which I'm hoping was, education, that type of thing. I think actually it was just a change in setting style,
change in stimuli.
As we got.
I'm just thinking about the ABC drag, all the youth kids in America for the last maybe not for the last chunk, but a few years ago there was 3 or 4 years where it was just like every kid was just dragging every hold, even when like an 8 mil crimp would show up in a comp, these kids could all 3-finger drag it. And it's like, you won't get a growth plate injury probably doing that. There are other risks.
Yeah, precisely. And now, big holds, open holds. And if you've got an unstable growth plate, then the impact, the repeated, even though it's not a crimp pulling in, but bang, bang, bang of that, the micro adjustments that have to happen and the forces that come through the whole hand, hours and hours of training moves, like trying to learn that double paddle dyno, that kind of thing, and bang, bang, oh, I'm off, right, we go again, bang, bang, and we don't feel tired that doesn't particularly fatigue you, does it, in the same way? And so you can still feel, okay, I can keep doing, I can do this for 2 hours, and they just, repeat that same thing over and over. And growth plate injuries, in my experience, are increasing again. I'm seeing more of them again. Kids are just climbing more at a higher grade, higher intensity and frequency and volume than they ever have done. And we have no, that I'm aware of, youth guidelines, certainly none in the UK.
Yeah.
Which isn't a criticism of any organising bodies within the UK. So that's what I'm saying. But when a sport develops, it develops from the top down, and this is sort of the last area to get put in. So, how can you advise a coach and say an average, the imaginary average 12-year-old should be doing this amount of climbing per week? Any other sport, basketball has different size courts for different chronological and developmental age. They're even considering that the difference between chronological and developmental age. Different weights of ball depending on how old or big the child is. Recommended times that you play in attack and defense, because they load the body differently. And they've thought about these things. They've done the research. They've looked at it, and we haven't. We've got no idea. We've got no.
You mentioned. You mentioned growth plate injuries earlier and I don't want to speak out of school because I don't have the studies in front of me, but I want to say that, and I think I've seen Tyler post about it. I've seen him post some, and they're not super high quality because obviously you can't do RCTs on kids. You can't do randomized control trials on kids. Have them go use the campus board and see who gets a growth plate injury. Yeah. That's not a study design that would pass a review board. But I think they've done observational studies where they noted that teams that use the campus board did wind up with more growth plate injuries. And I wonder if that almost is less insidious, because it's a lot easier to just go to a coach and say, how many kids are on your team? How many of them got growth plate injuries? Do you have a campus board in your gym? Is the campus board part of your training? Versus going to them and being like, well, how many paddle dynos has your team done this season? That's much harder
it's always
to quantify.
A real thing about mine of in youth climbing. Under 18s are often sort of banned basically in a lot of climbing gyms in the UK from using things like a fingerboard to warm up on. Yeah, because fingerboards are dangerous.
A fingerboard.
But they can go in the cave or on the board, on the tension board too, and try a V10 that's the crimpiest thing in the world, and nobody's there to say, I think you've done enough attempts on that now, and you need to back up. So we'll trust them to do that. We have youth in and again, it sounds like I'm moaning and complaining. I'm not. I'm aware of why these are here as well, and what we need to do to change them, which is what I'm trying to work on. You can drive yourself to the climbing wall in a car that you have worked for and paid taxes and bought and own, but you can't use a fingerboard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's if you know anything about if you're a strength and conditioning person or a physiology person, then you could do some dumb stuff on a fingerboard for sure. But generally speaking, what you're going to do on a fingerboard is going to be generally it's going to be very controlled, very low velocity. You're thinking about your grip in a very managed way. Whereas you put an athlete in a goal-oriented sort of sport situation, like trying to get to the top of a TB2, there's just going to be a lot less overt management of their grip. It's going to be much higher velocity, much more coordinated. All these things are going to come into play that are higher risk.
Yeah, totally. And so I'm starting some research now, just in the process of putting it together, of going and looking at, because we actually don't know if climbing has an injury problem. We may have anybody who gets injured. Yes, obviously that's a real impact on that individual. But looking at the population as a whole and how we compare injury rates and such, is it higher or lower than soccer or whatever? We don't really know.
That's so funny. As a coach, I can't help but laugh when you say you're not sure if climbing has an injury problem, because I'm just thinking about all the people who have done my intake form where, I'm like, please describe any major injuries. And they're like, I did my A2 on this finger and A4 on this finger. I injured my lumbrical. I've got pain in the front of both of my shoulders. I did my MCL last year. But other than all that stuff, I feel great.
Yeah, yeah. I will talk to climbers, and they will say, "Yeah, I don't have an injury." And it's like, "Oh, right, okay. Yeah, talk me through, a climbing session, what you do." Well, I warm up like this because obviously I can't do that because that hurts. So I've adapted it to do this, and then I do this climber, but I don't go on that because of my bad knee. And I was like, "But you said to me you didn't have any injuries," and they're like, "Well, they're not injuries. They're just things that I work around."
Tweaks.
Yeah,
Niggles.
tweets,
Yeah.
niggles, yeah.
This is like when I tell people don't do something if it's painful, and they were like, well, it was uncomfortable, but it wasn't painful, and I'm like, okay, well,
where's that
kind
line?
of mincing words.
Yeah, semantics in order to do what they want to do.
It is like
but the children do injure differently. We know that, and they won't get the. Because as they grow, there's proliferating so many cells that recovery is through the roof, and so generally, they don't get tweaks and niggles and that type of thing, but they do get bone stress injury, that type of stuff.
Yeah, and they can get overt injuries for sure when they're really trying hard. I mean, it can definitely can happen.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. You mentioned. And this is just from the UK perspective, but you said like they want to create another Toby or another Aaron, and that was like a really that stuck in my mind because it totally makes sense. And I guess I see that duality there where it's like, yeah, you do want to have like really high level athlete outcomes, but at the same time, those outcomes they can come from a variety of different places for sure. The mega try hard and the pushing athletes as hard as you can, that can create the survivorship bias that's going to create like an Olympic level athlete, but also like both Toby and Aaron in the recent offseason had some, made some content, YouTube video or Instagram or whatever in each of their cases where they were like pretty severely burnt out or dealing with a pretty severe injury. And so in one sense, I hear you say create another Toby or Aaron, and I could replace Toby or Aaron with Olympian, but I could also replace Toby or Aaron with like an athlete who's like really struggling, maybe even publicly with their performance and their mindset.
Yeah, completely. But that is with the best of intentions, and this is why I was saying I'm not actually criticizing anybody. But when I run, I do an injury prevention workshop, and I do a couple of workshops. And when I talk to coaches and parents, I've recently started doing workshops with parents as well. I'd say that like this is funneling. We are funneling. We are taking 10,000 children. Random number I've picked there, but and we want to create one Toby or one Erin at the end of it. And that is really what the youth development model, the long-term athlete development model. We have all these little schemes over here in the UK as children as they progress through different levels and competitions that they go into, and then the regionals, and then that's what it's all about. Really, behind it all, it can be done in different ways, can't it? It can be incredibly well intentioned and well managed, and this, that, and the other, or as every other sport in the world has had, some bad actors and some bad practice and that kind of thing. And I'm just really passionate at this early stage in climbing that we do not make the same mistakes that other sports have, because we've got in research, it drives me bonkers that we have had, I think it's gone or now, to be honest, the opportunity to really sort of standardize our research approach so that everything can be homogenous and more useful and comparable and this type of thing. And we haven't. Everybody's just gone off in different directions doing their own thing. And it's the same within, coaching and the competition world and that kind of thing. We could have, let's stop here for a minute and create some guidelines, some gold standards, whatever we want to call it, some things that we're going to, ethical structures that we're going to stick by and really make sure and publicize and that kind of thing. But it's the race to the next Olympics. And it is a top-down thing. So as I say, I know there are people out there who are also passionate about this as I am and are working on it, and it is happening. It just would have been nice 10 years ago. But yeah,
I mean, I think Josh from Test Piece, I've like chatted with him. He's another podcast host, and he's really big on like elite performance. And I think his devil's advocate argument, I don't know if Josh listens to my podcast, but I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth, Josh. This is just based on my conversations with him. He argues that like if we want to have Yanyas and Tobys, then we kind of do have to, if we want to sort through 10,000 youth climbers and get a Toby out of it, it does mean that 9,999 kids are going to get disappointed.
Yeah.
And probably like a couple thousand of them are going to have like pretty negative, they're going to get seriously injured, or they're going to have like psychological burnout, or their
we don't
relationship
know.
with the sport is going to end.
What
and
is
he's kind of like,
ratio?
that's the cost of elite sports, basically.
Yeah, it's a brutal, hard world. And I think it's wonderful now that we see, it seemed to start from my perspective, what I picked up on sort of within tennis, of people saying, I'm not doing this press conference because I don't feel emotionally well to do it. I'm going to take a mental health break. and you start like, well, they've got they're earning millions of dollars, wonderful lifestyle they must lead. It must be great being a pro athlete. It's not. I wouldn't. Yeah. I'm glad that I early on realized that was never going to be a path for me.
Yeah. Well, tennis is notorious, right?
Yes. Yeah. And, will climbing become the same? Are we going to get, like, they have tennis academies and all these feeders and these, this, that, and the other. Same in soccer. One of the people I coach now, I used to coach when they were much younger. Definite, like, when you get to work with someone and you think like, ooh, something could really happen here. This person's really, really quite good. And they went over to soccer, broke my heart. But very quickly, again, got to a very high level within that. But then actually decided this is not the environment that I want to be in, and has now come back to climbing, which is their happy place. Yeah, and is actually now back operating high level, knocking back on getting in the GB age related team again. Yeah, that spoke volumes to me, and that club that they were at was a very well known, probably one of the most famous clubs in the world that should have the gold standard going on.
Wow. Yeah, that thing you mentioned about like athletes being able to step back just made me think of, I actually forget whether I think it was the 2021 Olympics where Simone Biles like chose not to.
Yeah, the what's the gymnastic term? I want to say the wobblies, but it's not, is it? But
it's twisties.
The twisties. That was it. The wobblies. What am I coming out with? Yeah, but just able to say that, and the response on people was, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, well, I saw people on social media who were like, calling her a coward and calling her names and stuff. And it's like,
wow.
Those people, of course, these are the same people, probably men, who think that they could, beat Serena Williams in a tennis match.
Yes, there is a fantastic statistic.
They don't know what they're talking about.
Like, 60% of men believe that they could beat Serena Williams or something, isn't it? Yeah, I can believe that.
But it makes me wonder, like last year in the World Series, or in the World Cups, then there was that one boulder, I think you and I messaged about it on Instagram, where they were taking that crazy twisting fall. Maybe it was in like Prague or something, and just back flopping on the pads from a couple meters up. And I was thinking, like, is there a single athlete on the circuit who would look at this boulder and see the danger and choose not to try it during their 5 minutes? And I just don't think climbers. I don't think I've ever seen that in climbing.
No. That would be a watershed moment. I think I chat quite a lot with setters, and climb with some and know some quite well. My take on it, having had in competitions, seen situations where parents want adaptations made because their child has got an injury and can't really crimp. So can we take that crimp out of that problem, please? And it's like, no, your child shouldn't be in a competitive environment at the moment because they're not able to give 100%. But setters, I mean, incredibly hard job. And I think on the whole, they do a fantastic job. They create a challenge, don't they? And it's up to us whether we accept that challenge. So when people come to me and say, oh man, I've hurt myself climbing on these pockets, on this problem that I was trying, those damn setters, this kind of thing. It's like, well, they just, I love pockets. So I will look at that problem and I will do it. And I think my risk of injury on that will be quite low. Other people's, it'll be the other way around. And so it's up to us to have some responsibility and look at it and think, maybe that's for me or it's not for me. In a competition, that's an entirely different thing, isn't it? That choice is taken away from you. And that's in adult competition. I really do think it is taken away from you. It would be amazing, wouldn't it, just to see somebody go, that's not for me. But I also think...
Can I make...
Sorry, I was off. Go on.
Can I make the geekiest simile that you've probably ever heard? I don't know if you're a Lord of the Rings nerd.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I've thought about this all the time. There's this scene where anybody who listens to this this is some peak Jesse Firestone nerd bullshit.
I
There's a scene in Lord of the Rings where
Yeah.
where all the guys in the armor are like waiting for the gate to open. It's like the White City's getting like, sieged or whatever.
Yes.
And Gandalf is like, whatever comes through that door, your men of Gondor, like you got to stand your ground and fight it. And then like the gate opens and it's some giant like, beast in an armor, and it just starts like massacring everyone. And I just feel a little bit like at the beginning of the World Cups, like that has to be how it feels sometimes for those athletes. It's just like you have no idea what you're, especially in semifinals where, don't get to preview the boulders. You have no idea what you're up against. It's the hardest round. It could just be nothing but standing on dual techs. They could make you dyno to a mono.
Yeah.
When I coached like outdoor athletes, which is primarily who I coach, I do coach some indoor and comp athletes, but like primarily outdoor athletes, I'm like, novelty is a huge risk. You want to minimize the novelty to the most extreme degree.
Yeah.
But if you're a comp athlete, you don't have that luxury. Like you have to get exposure to as many things as you can, and you still have to go into a comp expecting that whatever is behind that gate, you have to stand your ground and fight it, which is just a crazy mentality.
Yeah. I mean, it's also what makes climbing unique and special. I can't think of outside of combat sports where the challenge is truly unique. Even when you look at things maybe like downhill skiing or whatever, that kind of thing, but they get to preview the course. This is it's on-siting, isn't it, at your max, and as you say, you've no idea what that is going to look like, especially nowadays. I mean, gosh, it could be anything, couldn't it? And that's also what makes it exciting, isn't it? And also what makes me glad I'm not and never was an international comp climber.
Not on that side of the equation.
No.
So,
Sure.
Okay, let's go all the way back to the guidelines thing because we kind of deviated a little bit.
Yeah.
So in this crazy world where people are up against all these unexpected challenges and stuff, like what role can guidelines play or what can that offer to coaches, athletes, parents?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's interesting in itself, isn't it? That I'm not sure that what I would like to help create out of this. Yeah, I'm not 100% certain because there's so much individuality, isn't there, that you can't particularly say. You can talk about these imaginary average youth climbers that at this stage they maybe should do this, and at this stage they maybe should do that. But it's also contextual. You couldn't have limited, or shouldn't, I might argue, Alex Megos or Adam Ondra, or the once in the, not even the once in a generational talents like they are, but those people that really are able, like your example before, to climb 6 days a week, absolutely smashing it, for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, and they've got the ability to absorb that and deal with it. What needs to come within any guidelines, and this is the tricky bit, isn't it, is that ability to be flexible within them and to individualize. So you have your obvious things like, peak height velocity and the relation we have with that, with growth plate injuries and such like. But for me, it's more about these efforts we should be making to build relationships with parents, with the athlete, create an open environment where like nothing's off the table for discussion and people aren't hiding things. And do you know what's going on in the life of that child, both from if you've got a young athlete who's performing at a high level, maybe training 16 hours a week, they're also holding down a full-time job, which is going to school, isn't it? If that was a pro athlete, you'd be like, oh my God, you're performing at this level and working full time. We would find that astounding. Yeah. And yet we just expect it of you. So what is going on in their lives, both emotionally and physically? Is climbing the only sport they do? Are they, working at quite a high level in 2 or 3 other sports, as we do see? Yeah. What's their recovery like? What's their nutrition like? It's all of that needs to be, and I think for me is more guidelines. It's guidelines around those soft skills, if that's what to call them. I would suggest.
I think that's probably appropriate, and just sort of maybe it's not even that the guidelines are, if I'm understanding correctly, it's not necessarily that the guidelines are going to say the athletes need to eat this much. It's more like the guidelines say the coach needs to have some sort of insight into whether the athlete is paying attention to their nutrition and eating enough.
Yeah, and to know where to signpost to if they perhaps need some help in that regard, and whatever that might look like. I certainly I came across when I went to speak with the parents at that training camp I mentioned before. You know, there was youth athletes there at a regional level who had their parent, a coach, a strength and conditioning coach, a nutritionist, and a sports psychologist. And I was thinking, how many of those are all talking to each other? What's the communication between all those? They're all fantastic things to have for a young athlete. Maybe a bit much, I thought, but but also a fantastic thing to have. Yeah, where's the connection? Are they all communicating with each other? Because if not, we're losing a lot of the potential there, I think.
Yeah, and there's just so much to cover for every athlete, and I'm sure those coaches have maybe that was for a single athlete, but I get the sense that was for a team.
That the strength and condition nutrition that was one athlete.
That was all for one. Yeah, if it's all for one, I feel like
around them. Yeah.
I kind of believe that could work. I mean, like I'm thinking about, Shauna Coxey has posted a few times about like the team that she had for her Olympic sort of run up, and like that was a legendary team, but it was also I think it was like 9 people or something.
Yeah,
it was a lot.
Yeah. And were they all communicating with each other? And this is the thing. I'm going back to when I used to coach squads, back when I was working in a climbing gym, just doing the kids clubs or whatever and that kind of thing. So not even particularly in that real structured way. It's I don't know what you would describe, like contact points. Just as that child is dropped off, make eye contact with the parent, and you can just everything okay? And hopefully 99% of the time they'll go, yeah, it's all fine. So you don't need to be entering into a long drawn out conversation, but then every so often if that parent sort of like goes like, pulls a face or gives you a thumbs down, to try and find 30 seconds to go over and say, oh, what's going on? Yeah. It can be anything, can't it, with kids, that you may need to be aware about emotionally, because that, we have that responsibility as well, don't we? There's some really interesting research looking into like the youth development model and such like that. Once they do get into their early teens, that kind of thing, and they start to, move away from parents and sort of shed that family connection in some ways. One of the biggest role models that they have isn't just necessarily their peers. It's coach. Coach is right up there. It's super, super important, isn't it? So you don't need to, as you say, couldn't with a squad know exactly what every child had for their evening meal before they came out and that kind of thing. But yeah, and some educational talks with the parents, that kind of thing as well. Again, going back to that, just because it's the only one I've managed to do so far, I've got some more planned. I started by saying, probably none of your children will win an Olympic medal. It's quite the odds are stacked against them that they will actually make it as a regular member of the full adult team for all sorts of reasons. And so we need to figure out, why are we here? What are we doing? What's the goal? What's the outcome? Because if it's Toby or Erin, then again we're funneling. If it's creating a more rounded, resilient, robust young person who's able to take their experiences, face challenges, face setbacks, deal with them, learn from it, make friends, become a climber for life, find an activity they're going to engage with for life. That's why we should be there.
You mentioned that like they might even be doing multiple sports at the same time. Colin McGee has posted about this before, that there's actually quite a body of evidence now that doing other sports increases really their longevity and like reduces their risk of injury and all these it has all these like beneficial effects. Yeah. Whereas I guess 10 or maybe 20 years ago, the idea was like, oh, your 3-year-old like loves to play with a tennis ball, and therefore like they will not do anything
bigger than they
play
are.
tennis. Yeah. It's like, and then therefore it's like they just spend their whole childhood just swinging a tennis racket, and they wind up like,
isn't it? I suppose
hating tennis and hating sports and hating fitness and maybe being injured and just a path to burnout.
And it's interesting because there are always examples, like I don't actually know the answer to any of these questions, but how much basketball did Adam Ondra play? How much time did Megos spend doing other, same with Yanya. They probably did early specialize, but what we have to remember is that when we use these as examples of, they're not like us. That they are totally different. They are outliers in the nicest possible way, and we shouldn't use them to compare against. If you're having to ask, again, another thing I said to these parents, if you're having, at the age of like 13 and 14, if you're having to think, is my child potentially the next Adam Ondra? The answer's no. Because you would already know. Yeah, because they're just athletes that are just on another level in so many ways. And so, just movement literacy that you get from different sports, spreading the load, all of that kind of thing, and all the different benefits you get from a team sport and such like.
Yeah, there's just so much. There's so much about it that's like I'm so interested in pure performance, and I'm so interested in like long-term progression. Like I can't not be, because I just am a climber at heart, and I coach people, and those things are so essential. But it's almost like the more I look at the youth scene, as a person who coaches adults primarily, like I've worked with youth teams, but I basically coach adults full time. Like I feel like the more you focus on fulfillment, probably the better athletic outcomes you're going to get out of those kids in the longer term. And the more you focus on pure performance, it's like, it's just so much to put a kid through. And I think you're right that the serious outliers are going to be able to cope with it. But yeah, it's like I was saying earlier about Josh, like you kind of have to have that meat grinder if you want to have a Toby Roberts at a certain point. But maybe we can make the meat grinder a little bit less intense, or
a bit less grindy.
Dull the blades a little. I don't know what the metaphor is.
It's just taking care of those that that system doesn't fit or work for, and making sure that we don't just dump them by the side and forget about them, or hopefully they don't even get to that point in the first place. Actually, would be better.
Right. Hopefully, kind of catch them before they fall into the gutter. As someone who has gotten really into strength training in the last quarter of my life or something, now having a baby girl, and obviously I want her to climb. It's like I so deeply want her to like fall in love with the outdoors and fall in love with the climbing lifestyle the way that I did, because I just think it's such a good life, and I can't guarantee that she will, but I almost feel like a stronger call as a parent to make sure that she strength trains and like and has that physical literacy and does a lot of strength training in her childhood and her early adulthood. That because it'll prepare her for like whatever else she wants to do. So I'm curious, like what your take is on the strength and conditioning side for youth. Do you think that that'll be a part of the guidelines? Do you have any hot takes about the existing teams and what they do?
Yeah, there's a stack of evidence basically showing how important it is for injury prevention. It's rare in a skill-based sport like climbing that if you make yourself stronger, that will automatically correspond to, hey, I can climb 2V grades harder now. That was nice, just because I've managed to bench press body weight. It makes you more robust. It makes your tissues have a higher tolerance level, so that the training and the climbing and the loads that you're putting them under don't go above what they can deal with, because you're up here now. So you will get less injury from that, but you will also, which gives you consistency, obviously, which is what we're all after, isn't it? Finding that manageable level. But you can train more frequently, more often, fit more density into a session, that type of thing, because you're stronger. So strength, underpins performance in more than one way. It's not just that true metric of I can pull this with my fingers, therefore I can do that. But that all over, body strength is super important for injury prevention as well. It's becoming more and more obvious, and then that's in youth, where strength and conditioning should probably I'll say look more sort of challenge based, movement based, repetition of movements and challenges, which can be skill game based type things where they have to achieve. I'm desperately trying to think of an example here, but not coming up with anything that I could describe in words. But it's going to fatigue their system through an actual guided activity. But it can also be the gym. That's much more popular, I think, in America, much more accessible in schools. A lot of our schools don't have either good gyms or decent gyms or the staff that can show people how to use it. In climbing gyms now, they all often have a weights area, and some pretty flipping good ones. Again, often under 18s are not allowed in that area.
Interesting.
So yeah, that's more of an insurance issue, is that most climbing walls will not have a person who is qualified in the gym, in gym work and able to assess people, teach people at an appropriate age that, they can go into that space. So yes, we know more and more it's important, but how do we access that and what do we, and so in the UK, I feel it is that more, if you like, body weight, calisthenic, challenge based. It'd be great if, we could get everybody split squatting and getting the weights out and deadlifting. And
well, it seems like you guys you have like you have a broader public problem of like just getting the weights into the climbing walls in the first place before you can tackle that
yeah, definitely. A lot of facilities don't have the space. A fully equipped gym is incredibly expensive, isn't it? And we all know climbing gyms are, there's a cost of living and such like. They thankfully seem to be staying afloat, a lot of them, but there's signs that, they're really struggling. They're finding it hard.
They're all getting bought out by private equity here in the States. I mean,
yeah, that's happened a little bit here as well. It's been an interesting one, and seeing true business principles brought to climbing, which has sat a bit funny with me in some ways.
Same.
Yeah.
If it comes with like a power rack and a leg curl machine in every climbing gym, there's like a part of me that's like, okay, I can
I
deal
can live with this. Yeah.
I don't know if it will, but
no, it's interesting, isn't it? So yeah, they're struggling. So, and their core business is creating a climbing environment that people want to engage with, and that's expensive with setting and holds and such like. So that's where the money's going rather than on some weights. So yeah,
that makes sense.
We'll get there eventually.
Yeah, it is funny to me that it's under 18, not allowed.
Yeah,
because I think like almost every climbing gym that I've seen a sign, it's almost always 14 in the States. And you were saying it's because like they don't have someone on staff who can like evaluate people or actually educate people. And I'm like, I don't think most of these climbing gyms have people on staff who can educate people on how to like do a squat.
But it's just,
you know what I mean?
Probably generally accepted, isn't it? It's a much more common thing, and to hear of a younger athlete doing weights won't raise an eyebrow, and in the UK it potentially still does. And people, I still have conversations with parents who are like, well, obviously we're waiting until after they've been through puberty before we hit the gym. And I'm like, God, no, get them in the gym now.
That would be like, you get out of college, you get your first job, and you're like, I'm going to wait to contribute to retirement until I'm in my mid-30s. It's like, no. Like,
oh, I like that analogy. Yeah. Start now, start early. Yeah, no, I like that. I'm going to, next time I have that conversation, that's what I'm going to say, thank you, and I will credit you with that. No,
I mean, I've done consults with people who are 22, and they're like, well, I just don't feel, I'm so strong, I don't feel like I need to lift weights. And I just said, like, you can spend a third as much time lifting weights as I have to, and you get twice as much of an adaptation benefit from it as I do.
Yeah,
right now.
Yeah,
and it literally is. It's like throwing your money away not to do it. It's like
the biggest opportunity ever missed. Yeah, potentially. So often we are happy having youth belay each other or belay. Independent climber, don't need supervision, even on the lead wall at the age of 14. But we won't allow them in the gym.
It's so. I guess it's just a variant in cultures, but
I've
also heard that in France you can like walk into a climbing gym and just start leading and like lead belaying, and like there's no test or anything. Which to my
the same
litigation and liability brained American, that does not compute.
No, and so there are just these cultural differences, aren't they? And just because I might be shouting about it isn't going to change an entire sort of culture around something, but it'll change a little faster, hopefully, if I shout louder and more often.
Maybe. I mean, maybe if the guidelines get into the science, maybe that is something that could change.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, totally. It's absolutely part of it. Yeah, it should be. Should be.
Cool. I guess we're kind of teasing another thing that we wanted to talk about, which is just being able to sustain the climbing life for longer. I certainly feel like my climbing got a new lease when I started seriously strength training.
Right.
And I really feel like if I strength train once or twice a week, I climb a little bit less, but I can just tell that my timeline in the sport is extending on the back end quite a lot. And I'm so much physically stronger. It's also just cool to be physically strong. I'm much stronger than I was 10 years ago, in a general sort of sense.
Just for like picking up a heavy thing and putting it in the back of your car or whatever. It's it feels good, doesn't it?
Or taking a big fall and being able to just like stand back up, and when I was, I've told this story on the podcast, I think before, but like when I was 32, I went to Rocklands and I was like joking with my friends, like, I'm over 30, I'm over the hill, like I'm going to go to Rocklands and try to do some of these dynos, and like this is it, like this is my last I'm
going to wear
I actually did really well. Yeah, I did like really well on that trip, and I was like, wait a second, maybe it's not over. And that was that was almost that was 7 years ago, and like I've done all my hardest climbing since then, basically. And because I started lifting more.
Yeah, social perception is something I'd like to talk about of what you've that when everyone around you agrees with you, you say, "Oh man, I'm going to have to go and do those dynos soon because I'm 35 now," and you won't get people saying like, "Whoa, hang on, what do you mean?" You can get that blah blah blah. People will go, "Yeah, of course, yeah, nearly 40, all downhill from here." I've seen the studies that says you lose muscle mass from the age of 30, blah blah blah. And that again, it's not peer pressure, is it? But what you sounded back to you agrees with you, and so people do just go, "Oh right, okay, yeah, I should probably stop then."
Yeah, groupthink, a little bit of groupthink.
Yeah, and it's wrong, absolutely. Sadly, that it's not more widely known that we should just be thinking about keeping going. There's quite a lot of studies now, both in trained and untrained individuals. So one in untrained individuals in their 90s, which showed over, I think it was either a 6 or a 10-week sort of like squat program. They gained muscle mass in their 90s, untrained. But there's also, I've seen studies with masters athletes, highly trained athletes, and high-level college athletes, and they put them on the same prescription, and they both come out with the same results. People in their 50s and people in their 20s, they made the same level of strength gains and muscle mass, and that type of thing.
Yeah, I think there was a pretty landmark study maybe like 2 or 3 years ago on this study was on men. There's been some pretty promising research on women lately too, which is a little more new and a little more nuanced. But like the study on the men was that like men, this was like a really big deal when it came out. It was like men could make the same exact hypertrophy gains in their 70s as I think they were comparing to men in their 30s, not their 20s, but it was just that the men in their 70s needed to do like significantly more working sets so that they got like more effective reps in the set. They had to do like 6 or 7 working sets.
Have to give a bigger message to the body, because systems do become less efficient as we age, and that's both hormonally, both the quality of the tissue, if you like, and also the size of the signal that's needed to drive a change and to actually make a change. But it is still possible. So it might look different, but we can still keep going. And there are, again, outliers. There are people out there in their 60s, 70s, and their 80s who are still performing amazingly well. They are the outliers. And the message I take from them is that you can stay pretty near what your peak was for a long time. Now, their peak is higher than I will ever achieve, most likely. But they're still operating up there, aren't they?
Close to it.
Yeah. So, although they're outliers, I would never try and copy them, if you like. But it gives me I can look and see and think, aging, yes, time-related health issues is what I call it. Some people do, unfortunately, suffer from ill health, and we have to separate that out from athletic performance and training and such like. And I'm sure, sadly, we'll all know people who we thought were fantastic examples of healthy living, whatever that might mean, who succumbed to, some illness that's come out of the blue. Yeah, so that there is a bit of a roll of the dice that goes on, but we shouldn't use that to think, oh, well, I won't try then. We should all be planning. I think I've figured out if I'm still climbing when I'm 80, I think it was last year, I was halfway through my climbing career.
I like thinking about that. I honestly, well, no, I don't like thinking about that. I like that for you. I don't want to think about it. I mean, I can't help but feel, I guess I'm just a cynical person, and I feel very generally optimistic about people's ability. But like when I look at myself, I'm like, it's over any day now, and I'm just like, it's just miraculous that I continue to climb hard. I just try not to think about it too much. But I feel like for every one of those people that are crushing in their 50s or 60s, there has to be dozens or hundreds of people who you just don't hear from. They're not showing up in the comment threads so much to be like, I got a finger injury that just wouldn't heal, and so I had to quit. But who knows if they were doing a good job or if they were really. You just have to be more dedicated
to measure, isn't it? Because they've dropped out. So where do you find this population? In order to question them or measure them, it's really, really difficult. But again, similar to what we were talking to in the youth, we have to assume it's happening. It's happened in every other sport, and so yes, it must be happening in ours as well. I think we have a benefit, a bonus. No, benefit. I can't think of the correct word. An advantage. That was it. I got there in the end. Climbing can look different. I've got a stack still of classic mountaineering multi-pitch trad climb routes of an easy grade. 3 and 4 star routes, absolute classics that I've never done. Maybe that's where my motivation goes when I'm no longer able to push myself super hard physically. I'll still be getting into the mountains, having some wonderful days, feeling the wind on my face or whatever, and all that kind of thing, and going out with people I care about and partnerships that you have with climbing friends and all of that. And maybe that's what it'll look like when I'm 70. Or maybe I'll be like
could be or later
and sending, super hard, scary trad routes. I don't think I will.
Well, I mean, here in the Northwest where I live, in the Northwest part of the States, like we have Fred Beckey. I'm not sure if Fred Beckey's an international.
Yes.
But I mean, he was notorious for climbing. It was like, until I think a couple weeks before he passed, you'd run into him in the mountains, or he would be hanging out in a parking lot somewhere, like trying to get somebody to belay him. He's like 86 years old or whatever. It's like, I don't know. I just have, it's hard for me to think that would be me. I mean, maybe it's just because I haven't pivoted from bouldering really well, but it is insanely inspiring that those people are out there for sure.
It is. That's what we should take, I think, from it. I think desire can change as we age. I no longer want to go to nightclubs and tank it all night and go to work on 3 hours sleep just because I don't have that desire to do that anymore, and I don't see that as a bad thing, and I don't feel like I'm missing out. So what I see with aging is that it's almost a bit kind of self-medicating. If you've still got that desire and that drive, I think you will still be trying and training and doing everything that you can. If you haven't, I think we become okay with that because we actually don't have that desire and that drive to do it. So we're not like, oh, I'm terribly missing out, or oh, this is awful, I can't do this anymore. We've kind of accepted and adapted or changed. Okay. So that desire and drive, and if that wanes, then fine. I would always question and have a think, and I'm sure people will do, about why is that desire changing. But I know Steve McClure, he gets asked now, how are you still going so well and so hard, and it basically said because he wants to. He's still got that drive to do it, so he's doing it.
Yeah, I think I really feel that, and also I was going to say, like Newton's law, like it's an object in motion tends to stay in motion, and I think that's why when I noticed strength training was having such a meaningful impact on not just my climbing, but on my life, the vitality that I feel. Right, it's just so much easier to keep doing it. Yeah. And I don't do it now because it makes me feel good. I just do it because it's what I go do,
It's almost automatic,
It really is. In a way that if I'm being honest, like climbing doesn't really feel that. I'm probably one of the most psyched people that you'll ever meet, but
Yeah.
but I do have the slumps, and when I get a slump in my climbing, in my motivation to go climbing, I'm okay with it, And I actually feel that right now. It's like hot. I'm tired. The season's been long, and it's kind of like, okay, I don't need to go out there and like beat the crap out of myself. Now, I should say, I have a solid 3 or 4 bad sessions before I realize that that's the signal that my body is sending me. But I do hear it eventually. I'm kind of thick-skulled that way.
No, I think that's totally fine. And if you look at what we know from like COVID times, where if nothing else, a lot of habits got broken. A lot of people never got back to going to the gym, so that their object stopped moving, didn't it? And then we've got inertia. And I find it endlessly fascinating how hard it is to build a habit and how easy it is to break a habit. And these could be people who have been going to the gym for a decade, 3 times a week, and then because they didn't go for 3 months or whatever it might have been, suddenly I don't do that anymore. And it's gone. And for a lot of people, that stayed. Strange.
Yeah, it's interesting because I now, it's 2026, so I now, a cohort that I have in my coaching is people who started during COVID because it was like a thing that they could go do, especially outside. Yeah. And it was like, more safe or more allowed. It was a way to like stay physically active. Yeah. And a lot of those people are now climbing pretty hard. But there's like this whole COVID like population that is, I don't know. It's interesting in my mind that those are, well, I guess like time is just a funny construct, but also it's cool to me that people got into it during that time because it's easy to think of it as a time that was very constraining on climbing because the gyms were all closed and stuff. But there's actually a lot of people who that was when they got started.
Prompted them to get outside or to get started in the first place. Yeah, that's cool.
That's reassuring.
Yeah.
So you're in your 50s, you said? I don't want to
only just. I'm not going to age myself too much. But yeah. I've crossed that barrier now. I wasn't bothered at all. I remember about 30 or 40, and I was totally fine about 50 until about a week before. I will admit to having a bit of an existential kind of like, oh, blimey, what's going on here? That's a real number. But that didn't last long. I'm fine again now.
Yeah, I mean, it's just from the outside looking in, this is always the image crafting of social media, but it does seem like you spend a lot of time going climbing in cool places in Europe, so that has to help the sensation of time passing a little bit.
Incredibly fortunate with the advent of things like, remote working. Basically, we can go away. It's been prompted a lot by the fact my partner is retired and she needs somebody to belay her when she goes on holiday in Europe all the time. So I just have to take one for the team and go with her. Incredibly lucky to have crafted a life where we can make that happen. We went away 4 times this winter. I think it was 9 weeks in total we had abroad.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah. But this is going into aging and such, that this is the time when you do potentially start to get things back. You're at the moment are right in the middle of it. But once the children are older, going to college, is more independent, then people start to get time back and can have less load in elsewhere in their lives and start getting back into things. And it's where you find a lot of semi-retired or early retired people who are basically behaving like pro athletes in the way that they're living and applying themselves to things. Fantastic to see. So nothing ever stays the same, does it?
I almost said earlier when we were talking about this, like, because I see this thing on social media where people are like, I'm going to train like a pro, and my like gut reaction to that every time I see it is, okay, well, step number 1 is you need to quit your job because pros don't have jobs, But actually, what you're saying is, you get to a certain point in your aging, you do get to quit your job and train like a pro.
Yeah. And if we hold on to and we're maintaining and looking after ourselves as best we can during these years when things are really difficult, then you're going to be in a pretty good place as a healthy, touchwood, 50-year-old who understands themselves, has learnt about themselves and can apply themselves with the hopefully time, energy, experience. It's a pretty potent combination.
So I have to ask then, like, what what has been the most important for you? You did mention like the desire is really important. That feels like a hard thing to kind of, cultivate or force. That feels maybe you can just by thinking about it or whatever, but like maybe that's a little more intrinsic. Like what are the habits or the actual things that have worked for you?
I can, yeah, and obviously you're asking for me. I think very much definitely on this subject can only speak, for myself. I get better results if we're talking about numbers and that type of thing, if I'm really enjoying what I'm doing with no real attachment to, am I going to send this route? I'm enjoying the experience of being where I am, with who I'm with, all of that surrounds it, and just climbing on the rock. And that's really hit home this year for me, this last year. Been super busy, working on the business, building the business, trying to find a work-life balance, being terrible at that. Finally sort of like got there. I did have what I think was long COVID, and that really floored me and just left me. I was able to do stuff and whatever, but I couldn't really perform, didn't have much energy. I was very flat for a long time. And to come back and then feel that, I can try, I can engage with this in a new, it's been a bit like a fresh start for me, and I'm just absolutely loving climbing at the moment. And I look back and realize that actually sort of like for a couple of years there, I was doing it. It was my habit, I think, that it's like, what we're doing today? Oh, we go climbing because it's Tuesday. I always go climbing on a Tuesday. And I wasn't really enjoying it. But I was trying, I was pushing, I was desperately trying to create something. And I think I should have just backed off. So, and whenever I look back on when times have gone well, it has been that unpressured sort of situation where you're just open to what the rock's going to teach you, and sometimes it teaches you're not good enough yet, and that's fine, and other times it gives you a small victory. And
going with the flow a little bit.
Yeah, and then things happen. I can't summarize it any more than that, really. That it has to be that sort of environment for me to perform well. And so you almost...
I think that's interesting. Like, it's so... I think we're very... as a culture, I don't know how much this American climbing culture or just social media climbing culture, but we're very attached to like high performance as being the thing that is going to like be the most satisfying or be the most gratifying, maybe would be a better word. But like you're describing a way of engaging with climbing that's almost purely fulfillment driven, and it's almost funny to me because I have the instinct of like wanting to know like what kind of grades you're climbing or like what kind of routes you're climbing, but I actually don't even think that that's relevant to the conversation. You know what I mean? And it really isn't. If the goal is just to have a more harmonious relationship with the sport.
But what I've found 2 or 3 times over this 30 years is that when the grade improvement is happening almost as a side issue. It's just taking care of itself and doing it.
You take care of yourself and it takes care of itself a little bit.
Yeah. I'm just enjoying and loving climbing, which then means I'm giving everything when I do climb, but not in a way that comes from, I must get this because this number is important or will define me in some way. It's just like, I'm loving this challenge. I had a route on the last trip that was of a grade that I should have got within a day, and I think it took me 3 sessions. But it was such a good route. It sounds such a cheesy thing to say. I didn't really mind climbing it again. Yeah, I mean, let's not beat about the bush. I would have been, I did really want to clip those chains, and it was like, oh gosh, what's going on here? But also, it was just a fantastic route. So
that's just like that's to have. Every single climber is going to have that experience, probably at least once a year if they're spending a lot of time in a performance kind of climbing context, going on trips or climbing outside or whatever. I mean, I literally went outside on Monday and I didn't have a great plan for the day. That's always a sign that my motivation is waning for the season. Right. And I just tried some V8, some random 1-star side of the road thing that never gets done. Someone told me that it was actually pretty fun. He was like, this is actually really fun. I flashed it. I mean, I broke this big foothold off, but it's really fun. And I think it still goes. And I made the mistake of like, I'll go warm up on this for the other thing that I want to try. And I just had a horrible session on it. And it's so, I could actually feel, because I coach people and I talk about this stuff all the time, I could feel the tension in my mind of it wants to suck me into the vortex of like redefining my whole climbing personality based on my experience on this one thing, you know? But then as soon as I'm like, wait a second, I have other stuff I want to do today. I have to go back home to my daughter in a couple hours. Like, I'm not going to make my whole day about my emotional experience that I had on this one thing. And then I pack the pads up and walk away, and I turn around and look at it, and I'm like, no, it's not important to me. It's fine. No. And I also know for a fact that I'll go back to it later and have a different experience on it. And that's totally the benefit of a longer career. You just realize, like, not to get sucked into that. Yeah,
not today. And it doesn't matter. Yeah, that rock will still be there next time you fancy a tussle with it. But also you might not fancy going back for a tussle with it. And that's
never go back. And that's okay in this case. Yeah. That's totally if it was a 5-star route, it would be a different story.
Yeah, but that's totally okay. I have a friend, Karen Gale, her and her partner Doug, originally from Australia, and they're like full-timers, live in Spain and Norway, basically go to Flatanger.
Cool.
Wow. Yeah. They both work, but their climbing is the thing. And Karen, she's fantastic. I'll call it coaching, really, but on the sort of like psychological side of things, but not. It is performance related, but it's not performance related. And I was having a conversation with her where I was like, Karen, it's happened and it's come out of nowhere. I'm just loving climbing. And I'm talking to her, and she was like, well, yeah, it's probably because you've had this period of not really being able to engage how you are. And now you're just feeling like, oh, isn't this wonderful? I've missed this so much. And I realized that was also helping my performance. And as soon as I realized that, I started getting anxious. It's like, where has this come from? Because I haven't done anything to earn this newfound feeling of a wonderful engagement with climbing has just appeared. So it could just as easily go, couldn't it? Yeah. And
it's like really the macro view of what's happening when you're red pointing a route or onsighting a route, and you're in like an amazing flow state. And then you get to a decent hold, and you're like, wow, I'm in such a great flow state right now. And it's like, there it goes, it's gone. It's like you looked directly at the object, and you're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly that. And she'd be a really interesting person, I think, to talk to. Cool. Yeah, on a podcast on around this whole subject. She's amazing. And Doug, very high level climbers. The people that she's worked with, I could name drop. I won't do that on her behalf. You know, some really top level climbers.
Cool. I'd love that.
Yeah, and it was just interesting to notice that within myself and to relate that back, that's when I've always performed well, is when that's been my relationship with the climbing. But also then the instant anxiety as soon as I thought, how do I hold on to this?
Yeah.
There's this thing.
There is this balance of pushing as hard as we can. And as hard as we can has to be a crucial part of the sentence. It's not just pushing hard infinitely forever. There has to be some sort of acceptance on the other side of it, of like, actually, I can't push that hard. I've felt that so many times since my daughter was born that it's like I go out and I would go really hard on something, and I would be climbing the way that I was climbing 2 years ago or 5 years ago, which I think is really important. But then I would get home and I have to take care of her all night, and I wake up the next day, you know, after a miserable night of sleep, and I just feel, I feel so bad, and I realize, like, okay, I am pushing as hard as I feel like I can, but actually I'm like pushing harder than I really can, really? I'm not saying that I'm doing a good job of it, because I'm really still trying to figure it out, but I've had some good, I've had a few good outcomes this last like 6 months or so.
I've seen
strictly because there's been a couple times that I've been able to be like, okay, I could go out Wednesday, but actually I'm going to wait, and I'm going to go out Sunday, and I'm going to rest, 3 days, and maybe do my strength training. And that means I'm only going to climb 3 times in this 2-week period. But that is what I feel like I actually can do right now. And there's like a radical acceptance there. Yeah. That has to be one of the most important parts of longevity in my view. I'm just getting started. I know I'm only 39, but what do you think?
Totally. Yeah. But that is that voice of experience, isn't it? That comes with time. I always say these things come with time, not with age. That you learn to listen to yourself maybe, and actually hear what's going on, rather than just blindly pushing and thinking that you must whatever it is, that you said, I should go climbing today, but you don't. It's not a must, is it? You don't have to go climbing that day. And is it better in the overall picture if you don't? And yeah. Got to go with where you are at the time.
Do you still boulder much?
Yeah, I do. I tend to boulder indoors rather than outdoors. If the weather is okay, I find it hard to grab a mat and go boulder rather than
I won't be offended.
rather than grab a rope. But yes, I do. Yeah, I have the mats. I do use them. And yeah, but it's not as if I don't enjoy it. I do. It's just every year I say, because I do actually think it's the one thing that would benefit my climbing the most is to get into a period of outdoor bouldering.
So it's just strictly you just prefer the feeling of climbing on a rope, even though maybe bouldering would help you unlock something.
Yeah, no, I've said that out loud. That's ridiculous, isn't it?
I just repeat people's words back to those. This is my whole job, by the way.
No. Yeah, this is very much what Karen does as well. And you're like, oh, yeah. And you get to the end of a conversation and realize that person hasn't answered a single question. They've just rephrased your questions back at you, and you've answered them yourself, and you had the answers all along. But it's cool. Yes, but that's because that's what I prefer doing. And at the moment, things are still progressing. Things are going well. So I've not come up against a plateau where I'm like, oh, I really need to bust through. But I do know that I just think there's no replacement for outdoor bouldering, for both trying hard, for variety, for opening your eyes to what's possible, for micro beta. All of that,
Mm-hmm.
and just trying really hard. So yeah, I do need to. I'm going to.
Nice.
I'll promise in public. I will do it.
As someone in their early 50s, the very early 50s, what have you done in your career that's made bouldering feel like safe as something to engage with? Because I talk to a lot of climbers who are in their 40s and 50s where bouldering doesn't feel so accessible to them.
Yeah. So potentially going back to that, there's two things I think really. One is time. Again, I said it's not age, it's time. Lots of people say I can't boulder because I don't like falling off. Why not? It's my bad knee. Yeah, they will always have a joint. It's my bad ankle. It's my bad shoulder. It's my bad, and I feel sorry for those. I feel sorry for those joints that get this label of bad. And you'll talk to people and say, "Well, what think it is?" Oh, it's always been my bad knee. And they say, "Well, it can't have always been." What? I had I don't know. I fell off my bike when I was 20, and I was on crutches for a few weeks, and the hospital, just gave me the crutches and said, just get yourself back to normal life. You'll be okay. And ever since then, it's never quite been right. And it's really common. And it's not just because I have the massive bias of physiotherapy. They've not rehabbed that joint. And so it has been taking load differently. It will have had a strength difference maybe, or a control difference. And over 20 years... yes, that does make a difference. In the short term, probably not.
Change,
So while they're still in their 20s and what have you, the body's probably coping with it. When they start to get into their 30s, they do start to, my knee's sore when I'm walking down from a mountain day now, or I notice at the end of a bouldering session that knee's starting to get sore. And then and then everyone around you, as we touched on before, is saying, oh, well, yeah, what do you expect? You'll have worn that knee out. You go running as well.
What are you thinking doing that?
You've worn your knees out. You need to stop now, or that bone on bone is going to just wear away until that makes two inches shorter. It's horrible, isn't it?
I can't imagine what it's like as a physio, because even just as a person who knows a little bit about strength and conditioning and adaptation, like the whole bone on bone thing drives me.
No. And so it's time. It's not age. It's the fact that you've had a biomechanically or motor control affected joint for 20 years, and it always saddens me in many ways because that didn't need to have happened. If we get these tweaks looked at, and properly done. And that isn't me just trying to sell some physiotherapy sessions. It's what I really, really believe. It will be that sore finger that's never been right since that crack climb or that whatever. And I've never really had it looked at, but it's always been. And now I'm in my 40s, it's bothering me, and I can't, crimp on small edges anymore. So I've stopped going bouldering or, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's what happens. And it's wonderful in my job sometimes to be able to take people who are in the 40s and 50s and do what we can with that joint, which often is pretty, it has a pretty stark effect, that they can get back to doing the activity that they love and they thought that they weren't going to be able to. So that definitely that time aspect and not getting things fully dealt with, I suppose.
Not kind of closing the loop on those changes.
Yeah. And that's not really aging. That's time that's done that. It's just a coincidence that the age increases with time.
Right. And then wait, was time the first thing and there was a second thing?
Oh gosh, was there?
I thought you said first.
Yeah, maybe, no, I did. No, you said that. I was like, yeah, I definitely did. So it was about, let's say, like bouldering, what stops people. So that not getting things addressed, so we end up with a permanent tweak or niggle that kind of stops us. But I think really it possibly is the belief that they can't or shouldn't be.
That they can't take falls and they can't do like more powerful moves and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And how, many people, myself included, sometimes will say like, oh, yeah, bouldering now, well, it's not really training for outdoor climbing, is it? Or, when am I ever going to do a move like that outside? All that kind of thing. I love it. I love bouldering indoors. I was earlier this week, I was on a V5 comp style V5 where with a toe hook, lean over the top. I had to grab this pinch with both hands and then cut loose out of the toe hook and oppose it with it. Oh, it took me so long to piece that problem together. It was like half the session, and it was a V5. But I loved it. Yeah. Well, no, I was. That's not my thing, but I got it in the end, and it was a really good problem, and it was really good fun.
That's a good attitude. I mean, I feel the same. Like, because I stopped climbing the gym when COVID hit, and I really have never gone back. I just built a home wall, and I've now had a home wall for the last 6 years in one place or another. And so now every time I go in the gym, there's 5s, V4s with some foot plant move or something, and I get to have that whole learning experience. And it is, I'll say for me, it is humbling, but it is also really fun. I agree with you.
Yeah. You're like, oh, a lache. Right. What do we do?
Oh, man, learning how to straighten my arms to do a lache, I'm like, wow, this is not something that
I want to be here. This is where I have control. I don't, that kind of thing. But falling, I guess, really is the thing that when people say, I don't boulder anymore, or I don't like bouldering now, or I can't, it's falling. And then when you maybe have a look at them falling, if you broach that subject and start looking at it, you kind of often go, oh yeah, I can see why. Because they're just landing like a solid plank of wood, and there's that anxiety there that causes us to stiffen and not absorb forces. And then in the UK as well, I don't know if this is similar in America, we have lots of different approaches, which is not a bad thing. We shouldn't all be the same, but you'll go to one bouldering gym and they will say, watch our health and safety video, and the video will basically be, don't fall, don't ever fall, use the down climbing jugs, plan how you're going to climb down before you set off, you shouldn't ever need to fall. And then you go to other gyms and they're like, falling is a part of climbing, get used to it, you will fall. Here's some guidelines on how to practice falling. And there's just such different approaches. And we need to embrace it, don't we? It is a thing you can learn and improve and become better at. It's a skill.
Yeah. I mean, I feel so lucky that like when I was a little kid, long before I had any idea that climbing was a thing, I think I was like maybe 6 years old, my parents put me in Aikido. It's like the martial art where you do all the rolling and I still do those rolls, maybe not maybe only like once a month or something when I'm having a board session in my garage. I'll kind of just play around and do all the shoulder rolls forward and back. And it's amazing to me when I don't do it for quite a long time how intuitive it still is, because I did it when I was a little kid.
That's cool.
And I mean, a lot of people don't have the benefit of that experience, but I see it all the time when I take big falls outside, that I'm able to like redirect that force into rolling one way or the other. Yeah. And I do think even if you weren't fortunate enough to do that when you were a kid, you can practice that stuff. And you're right, it's scary, it's intimidating to people, I think, especially if they're a little older, to think that they could get better at it. But it is such a skill. You're totally right. Yeah,
and it goes, I've seen, coming back to the strength and conditioning and aging, and strength and conditioning is important to maintain or increase our muscle mass as we age, for health as well as performance. It's the biggest indicator of a health span is the muscle mass that you have. And if you go on a journey with someone and increase their strength and capacity and capabilities, then they do become more confident in the falling. And then we've got this lovely overlap and this lovely loop of like, oh, I'm feeling more capable. I kind of like, I'm confident I'm going to be able to deal with this landing. And it's just a nice double positive that we get with it.
So maybe some strength, maybe some jumping. I mean, would you advise people follow any particular strategy for like learning how to fall better?
I like to get people in warm-ups jumping. Jump from the concrete floor onto the mat, which usually is about this high or so. But and for people I've done this with, there's one climber in particular I'm thinking of who is in his 70s. I run a workshop called Aging with Optimism, where I get people to jump onto the mats. And I've done this with people in the 70s and their 80s and such. Like they're like, it's like you're asking them to take a leap of faith. It's like, when was the last time they jumped? When was the last time they sprinted? Did a rapid change of direction? Did it, anything like that? They're just not used to those movement patterns. And the first time I did it, I didn't think much of it, to be honest. I was just like, this is how I warm up, the start of warming up for getting ready for falling off. So we'll all line up here and jump. So let's all do it together. 1, 2, 3, go. And only about half of them went. And the others were like, I'm not sure. I don't think I can do this. And it's like, wow. Yeah. And we're asking them to jump onto a nice soft mat. They're not, jumping on. And so that real hesitancy there. So jumping can actually be a good start. Jumping onto something, onto the mats, just to get them used to this idea. It gets us into those kind of squat positions for the takeoff, but actually that's where we want to be for the landing. And force production and absorption, essentially. But then I just say to people, I think it's got to be within their comfort zone. And again, for them to be aware that comfort zone may change, and that's fine. So just because you did something last session doesn't mean you should be able to repeat it and better it this session. But in your warm-ups, climb down to where you're comfortable with and jump off in control. It can be, as simple as that. I would introduce things to get people maybe to jump off in control and do a 90-degree turn in the air. An interesting thing I've never quite figured out yet, the vast majority of people turn to the left when you ask them to do that. I don't know if it's because we're majority right-handed, and maybe we're holding on ever a little bit more with the right. I don't know. So make sure that you do it both ways. And then depending on the person and the situation, obviously you can take that a little higher, or you can ask them to do a 180, ask them to do a 360. I have in the past put that a cloth on the floor and said, when you jump off, try and land on that.
That's good.
I've done it where they jump off and then I throw the cloth on the floor, and they've got to try and land on that.
Reorient.
Get them to jump off and catch a ball that I throw to them while they're falling off. All of these things. But really, all of that is to give them the confidence and the start of the skills and the techniques to actually fall off for real. To actually fall off going
not
for
to let go, but be doing something.
That doesn't work.
I mean, it's so similar to the methodology of becoming comfortable with fear of falling with sport climbing. It's really not any different.
No, exactly that. And it's also, it's motor control, it's engrams, it's built through experience, the same as climbing. And when we get stressed as a climber, we go basic, don't we? Or we go to what we're familiar with and we've done a million times. And so that's when technique starts to break down, isn't it? And it's the same if you're anxious when you fall off, your technique will break down in that same way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you often, like a nice cue is just to ask somebody that, because there is a wonderfully complex system where you can talk about what should contact the floor first and where is absorbing the force, so to the ankles and to knees and the hips, and what this should all look like. But you can't coach that to someone. They can't think about that. Landing soft or land quietly does the same job. It generally, for most people, if you just say to them, drop off under control and land as quietly as you can, that will achieve what we want, of like a bit of a concertina type effect that you just see children naturally doing, don't they? They just sort of collapse.
It's very natural for them. And rolling onto their side or onto their back is like very natural, it seems like, for kids. Yeah. Constantina is accordion for the people who don't speak British English, by the way. That confused the hell out of me when I started watching the Great British Bake Off. They were like, oh, it's all Constantina. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, Paul Hollywood.
All right, okay, sorry. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, and so it's just building confidence and then building up a repertoire, same as climbing.
Yeah.
If you learn how to heel hook, you try it all the time, don't you? Try and make heel hooks, and then you start to learn when it should be applied, how it should be applied, when it's going to work for you, when it isn't, that kind of thing. And it's the same with climbing. It's a skill.
That's great.
So, yeah.
I think like one tiny thing I would add for people is just something I observe, especially working with people in person, is that a lot of people are not good at rotating their torso in space. So if you have like a foot that's off to the side and you need to get levered up onto that foot, you need to, if you imagine an axis going straight through your belly button, you need to rotate on that axis and get your torso sideways. And here in the Northwest, we have so many lip traverses and heel hooks and mantles, and it's just, we have a lot of granite. And when people struggle with that rotating their torso in that kind of yaw axis, it seems to be to me that they don't want their head to be off to the side. They want to remain stacked with their head over their body and over their center of mass. And I think it takes practice to become comfortable, like knowing that your center of mass is lower in your body, especially for women, and that your legs are going to get underneath you naturally when you fall. If your hands dry fire and your foot stays on or something like that, it's easy to fall in a weird way. So there are obviously edge cases that are more risky, but I think practicing that situation and learning how to get your feet underneath you when you fall is probably like another worthwhile thing to consider, which is scary. I get it.
Yeah. And so practice that, if you know you're going to an area that's got that, go indoors and make some of those up and practice them. We will do lots of preparation for a trip, but probably wouldn't ever think about preparing for that, for example. But it's totally valid that you can build up a bit of a pattern of experience of what works for me.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Lots of useful things in there. Any other bits or bobs that you feel like we didn't cover that you want to make sure you leave people with?
Viewpoint. And I'm saying a viewpoint because this is something that's been ticking away in the back of my mind. And then I recently saw a type of article called a viewpoint, where it wasn't research. It was just, here's some thoughts, sporty, sciencey people. Let's think about this. Warm-ups, we've been looking at them wrong all this time and measuring them wrong and associating the effect of a warm-up with injury prevention. And it probably isn't. Injury prevention comes from the long-term chronic effects associated with performing specific things. Now, that might be some of the things that you do in your warm-up, if that makes that sense. But the benefit isn't an acute one. It isn't, I have done my TheraBand things, I am now proofed against injury here and now. Yeah. Doing that 4 times a week over 5 years, as long as we're progressively overloading this and not just blindly using your yellow TheraBand and doing 3 sets of 30 every single time, or for your entire climbing career, then that is what proofs you against injury. And warming up that thing that so many people don't like doing is about performing better. Yeah, it is preparing your tissues to perform and go hard.
Mm-hmm.
And you will climb harder if you recruit, if you warm up, and that is what it should be. Injury prevention is a separate thing. It's robustness, it's strength training, back to that. But also building up capacity within your particular sport and activity, spending time doing it at an appropriate level. And I just think it's a really interesting one to think about, of what is a warm-up for. It's not an excuse not to do a warm-up, because you will not perform better unless you do it. So don't stop doing it. But is your warm-up going to prepare you for what you're going to do? Don't have the same warm-up for a max board session than you would do for an aerobic circuit session.
Yeah. I mean, I've long catered my warm-up to the type of moves or the type of stress that I'm going to experience in that session.
Yeah.
And I think that's been really valuable for me. I mean, you use the word recruited, and I feel like the word coordinated kind of floats to mind for me too, which is just I want to feel like if I put my heel up on some high thing and I start trying to crank on it, that my body is going to, this is not the right words to use, but my body is going to, quote, find the right muscles or use the right muscles
totally.
In that situation to be prepared for the load, basically. And
yeah,
maybe the science doesn't bear out that prevents injury, but I sort of feel like I climb better,
Yes,
and that's worth it.
Which is and the way, I won't go into the details of it, but it's the way we've presumed that is correct. So basically, all of the research that we've done into warming up tends to show that it is correct. But if we look at it with this different viewpoint, it's like, oh, yeah, that's interesting, and so we can approach it differently. And make it about that recruitment, coordination. There's a psychological side to it as well, isn't there? If you've been in work all day, or you've had a terribly hard week both at work and with childcare and that kind of thing, and now you've got your day out, you need to shrug that week off, don't you, in some way, and decompress, and that's part of the warm up. Just reminding you, I'm here as Jesse the climber now, not Jesse the father, not Jesse the coach, not Jesse the podcast host, not Jesse the and
it's a list.
All of that, So it's just
I've given this advice to people who have really stressful jobs and go straight from work to climbing, which is similar to what you're saying, especially people who are nurses or doctors and things like that. It's your commute does not count as a transition time. I think if you're walking from the hospital or to the climbing gym or whatever, that could qualify, but I think driving doesn't, in my mind.
No.
But if you just get to the gym, get all your stuff, go to the warm-up area, sit on the bench or whatever, and just take 20 breaths.
Yeah.
And actually there are studies on doing this before and after workouts, and especially doing it, just taking 10 or 20 breaths after your workout, it has a positive effect on recovery.
Okay.
I personally, anecdotally believe that doing it before your workout is quite helpful as well. I don't know if the science is as strong on that.
I have I don't know what I would call it, a thing I try and encourage people to do when we're working with, when you get people who are mismanaging their load. In one way or another. These 1 minute check-ins, this point when you get to the wall and you're like, right, this is what I've got planned. How am I actually feeling? And how we work that out is that it will be a whole different podcast. What's appropriate for me to do today? And again, another thing I think I'm going to pinch off you then, because it's hard for them to catch themselves and just spend that 30 seconds thinking, is what I'm about to do what I actually should be doing? And I like the 20 breaths. That will make you sit down and check in with yourself, which is a term I don't always sort of like that much. But
I think
I mean
20 is a lot.
Yeah,
people.
You're going to be there for a while, aren't they? Yeah. In a
good way.
I like that, because I then ask people at the end of a session, did that session match what I wanted it to do? Have I gone too hard, too easy? Have I missed what I was intending to do? So what does that mean for my next training session? Or should I have Wednesday off? That kind of thing. I'm going to pinch that, because it's an actual physical thing you can make them do, and that will be the trigger.
Awesome.
Oh, thank
You're
you.
welcome to it.
Yeah.
That's
Thank
for
you very much.
You can keep it.
Yeah, again, I will credit you for it. But
Hey,
no, I like that.
that was a great little side quest. I appreciate that.
Yeah, sorry, I have many of them, so we better stop there because I'll.
No,
I'll
that's
be
great.
off
That's
on
why
the
I had
next
you on
one.
you on the show. Where can people find you, Andy, if they want to work with you or
Yeah, so
questions?
Instagram is one, isn't it, for everybody, and that's process.physio, but process physiotherapy, if you just type that in, yeah, I'll be on the internet.
Awesome. He'll be on the internet. Thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure.
I sounded every one of my 50 odd years there, didn't I? Like, you can Google that on YouTube or something. Yeah. Yeah, well done me. Yeah. My daughter will be laughing her socks off in the corner there. Right. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jesse. That was cool. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.